What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. The key to any memorable Pokemon experience is providing a bit of exploration to have you go out on your own and be met with unique places or challenges that can't be found anywhere else. However, sometimes they forget to actually make exploring worth your time, and they don't program anything worthwhile to make your travels fulfilling at all, or even worse, it becomes a burden and actively takes away from the fun in your game, making you regret ever getting off the beaten path. There are multiple ways for your own investigations to be thwarted in these games, so here are the top 6 worst purely optional areas in Pokémon. Number 6. Pikachu Valley. You might think that it's a little harsh to start out trashing a beautiful valley devoted to the series' mascot, but this location was one of the so-called updates plastered all over the trailers for Ultra Sun and Moon, showing how new and exciting everything was. Don't worry, if it's only been less than a year, this Pikachu Valley will make it worth the price for sure. Come to find out that this scenic valley just had a trailer and a lot of rats. Believe me, I can see that in the real world in my free time if I want to. I don't need it in this supposed island paradise. I mean, it's not like Pikachu was that hard to find in Alola to begin with, but also, it's a bit weird for them to have a whole area devoted to Pikachu in the first place in the Gen 7 games. Maybe this one guy just really loves it so much that he devoted all of his land to a Pikachu reserve, but you also can't even catch any of the Pikachu here. There are no wild Pokemon. The only thing that you can get is a gift of a Pikachu with a hat, but only if you scan a QR code. It's not even there for you to just freely pick up. And then you can get a Z Crystal to use that only works with hat Pikachus. Not even just exclusive to this Pokemon, this item is limited to just a few gifts that you may have missed anyway, with the only actually useful item here being a magnet, which you can find elsewhere in the game already. So this fantastical location is all just window dressing. It's just there to look pretty and sell the game, but in reality it's largely empty, which is actually a pretty good preview of how Pokemon games would shift moving on to the Switch. Number 5. The Corners of Kalos. Alright, so that's not really a specific location, but I had to include some mention of the Kalos region because, as we know, these games notoriously seem relatively unfinished, as if they were rushed out the door, so it's no surprise that there are a lot of dead ends throughout this land. The first one that I thought of was Azure Bay. This is an offshoot of Route 12 where you first get Surf, so you may expect some players would want to mess around with that new feature, but for some reason you're surrounded by invisible walls, so it'll kill any enjoyment that you might have had while surfing. Plus, there aren't even any exclusive Pokemon for you to catch. You can find all of them on the route that it took to get here. The only reason this dead end is on the map is so the legendary birds have somewhere to go eventually, but that only works thematically with Articuno. Why would the others flee here? No real explanation, so there's no reason to ever visit Azure Bay until the post-game. I was also really shocked at how little there was in the Lost Hotel, with it being relatively empty of any important features, and again, very few Pokemon exclusive to this area. But I had to include the totally real location, the Chamber of Emptiness. Very aptly named because there's absolutely nothing in here besides a Megastone, and I gotta be honest, I don't even know if Bayonet is worth it. And despite its proximity to the start, you need Waterfall, so you may not ever find it if you go straight for Victory Road like 87% of players. So the Kalos region is just full of these areas that should really be more rewarding, but end up so barren that it feels like you wasted your time for ever going there. Number 4. Lakeside Cave. The Galar region as a whole kind of has the reputation of being really polished, but it lacks an appropriate amount of things to populate this pretty-looking pretense, leading to things like the wide-open wild area, with maybe a point of interest every mile or two. Rose Tower is a perfect example of this, and if that wasn't required to do for the story, it would definitely be on this list. So what's my beef with Lakeside Cave? Well, after the Galar region sort of sidestepped caves altogether, only giving us linear man-made mines, the Isle of Armor had some pretty awesome caves that had multiple levels with branching links to other locations, so it was far more versatile than ever before. Then imagine my disappointment when the Crown Tundra did bring back those same kinds of interesting caves, but also this one. Lakeside Cave is just one big room with ramps leading back out into the same area. You would think that since this is such an important spot where you can trigger the Galarian Birds event, they wouldn't just leave the cave as a dead end, but no, this cave is a fraction of the size with none of the twisting intricacies that other caves have, even in this very tundra. The only possible argument for a positive would be Terrakion appearing once he's unlocked, but then you have to look at him and be reminded of how he's one of the worst translations to 3D we've ever seen in Pokémon. This could all be overlooked if Lakeside Cave just connected back to something, maybe around to the Rock Peak ruins somehow, instead of being completely void of any merit, and in the process butchering one of the staples of exploration across the Pokémon games. Number 3. Black City. That's right, just Black City. I think this is the only version-exclusive optional location on the list, however, it vastly pales in comparison to White Forest. And I'm not just saying that because I bought those versions of the game. White Forest is not only much prettier, but it has the added bonus of grass that can allow you to encounter wild Pokémon, all of whom were past Pokémon who were notoriously hard to find in the Unova region. So there was a real practical purpose to seek out this forest. No such incentive existed to go to Black City. Instead of catching wild Pokémon, Black City has a bunch of trainer battles, which can be good for money and experience, I guess, but this is already post-game content we're talking about. So if you want to grind, there are plenty of other high-leveled opponents around. There's maybe one shop that can get you a few items consistently, but then the rest of these high-rise buildings are just a facade. You can't even go inside most of them. When trespassing is the norm in this universe, it really sticks out if there's even one building you can't go inside, let alone the biggest city that we've ever seen in Pokémon up to that point. At least White Forest had an open field, but it also had little booths to buy items from, so there's really nothing that Black City has to make it stand out. It's just a worse version of Castelia several hours after you had already been there. And now I feel even worse for the poor souls who chose to buy those versions. Number 2. The Kanto region. This could honestly be considered one of the best by many out there, because a main selling point of the Johto games was that you could go back to what we knew the last time. I mean, that would be like going back to Peach's Castle in Mario Sunshine, so what's wrong with that? Well, if we're being honest, this version of Kanto in Gen 2 is a far cry from what we knew in the original generation. The new route between regions was cool, but once we hit all of the spots that we knew before, it's a hollow shell of what it used to be. The whole point of Lavender Town was the haunted Pokémon Tower, but instead of going back, they tore down that memorial to put up a Radio Shack? Sorry about the resting place of your beloved Pokémon, kid, but the show must go on, I guess. It is pretty neat that you can face all of the gym leaders again, but their gyms have lost all of the character, just turning into hallways. Or even worse, just a room in Blaine's case. Even Viridian Forest somehow falls victim to this, being a shrunken down version without any grass. Or there's Mount Moon being just a fraction of the size that it used to be. Honestly, the whole region seems to be miniaturized and stripped of detail, or even things to do. The entire Safari Zone is permanently closed. And it's not like Johto has one either, so that's a major component absent across two regions. So once the novelty of returning wears off, you start to realize that Kanto really went downhill over the last few years. Number 1. Route 212. Without a doubt, the most fruitless endeavor I have ever experienced in Pokémon is this miserable armpit. I wouldn't be surprised if people took years to ever discover this was even a part of the game. But this is the stretch of land between Hearthome City and Pastoria. As you may have noticed, that's not the usual path you take through the region, going up by Salacion Town and Veilstone instead. And then once you get to Pastoria and you beat the gym, the story then takes you back the other way by the lake to do some shenanigans. And then you already have Fly, so you might as well just warp back to where you've already been, meaning that the game is structured to make you miss this area altogether. And I can only assume that that was on purpose because they were ashamed of their work here. The top sliver of it is okay with the mansion, and you probably saw that south of Hearthome earlier, but then you're not likely to get very far past that until you get overwhelmed or knocked out, or just plain bored because it's not leading anywhere. But more likely you've never been past the gates of the mansion, and only once you beat Crasher Wake did you maybe try to venture past the city, only to find that it's a wretched swamp. I don't know about you, but the Great Marsh was more than enough swamp for me. Slowly trudging through the muck, getting stuck with every third step. Why would they make an entire route like this after already basing the whole Safari Zone around being as tedious as possible? Now, Route 217 is similarly slow, spread out, and rather boring to play through, but at least that leads you to a unique location in Snowpoint. Instead, for this route, it's just a back road on the way to places that you've already been ushered into. The only possible reason that you would want to go is to switch out your shards for TMs because you've probably got a bunch of them from the underground, but even then, 4 out of 5 of them are only just the weather setting moves, so I think you would be able to make do with other Pokemon that learn it naturally, meaning that only Platinum has a worthwhile reason for you to go as they switch it to a move tutor instead, with some more unique options available. But really, you would be perfectly fine without ever knowing that this sad little detour was ever even here. I generally like the Sinnoh region, but they really went out of their way to try and make you go out of your way with no real payoff, basically punishing you for exploring at all, which is the exact opposite of what they should be doing. I mean, sure, the Wayward Cave is a monotonous dead end also, but at least you could pick up a Gibble down in the depths. Route 212 has no such gold at the end of its rainbow, just a whole lot more rain, mud, and sorrow. For the most part, Pokemon games are overall decent when it comes to having your exploration feel like it actually amounts to something, but those are 6 of the worst, least rewarding optional spots in Pokemon. Which voluntary locations do you find the most trying? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!